Glenn, 2 words: personal brand. What do you think of when I say those words to you?
I actually thought of Russell brand, and like a personal Russell brand that you keep in your pocket. But that's not where we want to go. But I saw a ridiculous thing.
Pocket brand.
A pocket brand, yeah. Personal brand is, in terms of what we're talking about, it's all about how you're perceived in public, for who you are, what people think of you.
I think that's true. However, I'm going to add some stuff to it. So I have decided we're going to talk today about personal brand. So your personal brand as a copywriter. The reason I want to talk about this, actually, most of the episodes that we do that are sort of like this, or the masterclasses that we do, or in fact, everything that we do that I plan, tends to come from. So I've got Whatsits on my arm. That's because I just picked my son up. He's got Whatsits on his arm. It's his personal brand. I think I get annoyed about how much bad advice there is out there. So you see it a lot out there. Advice to new copywriters: you've got to build your personal brand. How do you do this? Post regularly and all those different things. And I think lots of it is just nonsense. I think a lot of it is actually actively harmful in lots of ways, in the sense that it's completely the wrong way to think about how you present yourself to the world. And it's also a massive waste of time. So, for instance, I mean, you've spoken about this a lot before, especially in your successful copywriter course. We'll talk more about that at the end, maybe, about how people are told when they start trying to make it as a copywriter: post on LinkedIn every day, comment on big creators' posts, and all this is build your personal brand. And it's like, okay, that seems like a terrible waste of time to me, because it involves you spending a lot of time talking to other copywriters who are your competition, not your clients. And it also doesn't really seek to differentiate you. It's just the same thing everybody else is doing. So I thought, right, it's not okay to just say that and just say, I don't think that's very good advice. I think we should actually try and step out with something more useful and more practical. So today we're going to do the fix guide to creating your personal brand. Da, da, da. He's got Whatsits on his arm.
And he's got wasps on his shoe. What we're going to do? Da, 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 da. Yeah. Wasps. Okay then. Right. Well, lead the way, Nicholas Witchell. You have a mastermind approach to this process. I'm going to corroborate or deny your intelligence. But it's interesting. I was out for dinner last night with a writing friend who's at a stage where they're trying to get clients and all this kind of stuff. And when you were just saying about LinkedIn, he said, so he's doing well and he's getting clients and he's generating relationships, and they trust him, they value him, they respect him. But I just thought then there's a passing moment when he went, oh yeah, I do need to get on LinkedIn and all that kind of jazz. And I thought, no, you don't. You're already successful without being a presence on LinkedIn. You do not need to do that. You need to take the good relationships that you've already garnered and develop them. He will do that, and he won't get. But it's just the mindset of, oh, I need to get onto LinkedIn. I need to do these things. I need to do that. You just don't. You really don't. There are more clever ways to get to there. Just as a disclaimer for any moaning Martins out there, you can still use social media to connect with copywriters. You can still talk about your stuff on social media. You can still present your brand on social media. You can still use that as an avenue. But it's more of a case of in the first instance, remembering it is for the social aspect of it, especially if you just communicate with other copywriters. But also, no one wakes up, to paraphrase the Bill quote that we always use for everything, but no one wakes up and thinks, I need to go and check if Glenn's done something on LinkedIn. No one cares if you don't post that day. No one really cares about that. And certainly people who are busy, who are going to pay your wages and hire you to write copy, they're not checking LinkedIn. for you. They're not like searching LinkedIn for those gigs. They're just not. So just
unless your goal is to become a LinkedIn creator and monetize your brand that way, which is really hard to do and isn't really copywriting. It's a different thing. It's a different job. You know, you can try and go and do it if you want. You're probably in the wrong place watching this. You know, go and do that. That's not being a copywriter. Being a copywriter is getting paid to write copy or writing copy for your own business, whatever. And getting paid lots of money to write copy is the ultimate expression of that. And by the way, if you do that right, you can earn way more than most of those creators anyway, because we know some of them, or we've encountered some of them, and often crippled with self-doubt and not making half as much money as you might think they are. So this big audience on LinkedIn, probably not really the best goal for you. What you want is a smaller, higher value audience that actually generates recurring work and revenue for you. Anyway, that's the goal. If what you want to become is the next Glenn, I don't know any names. Alex Hormozy. If that's your goal, you want to be him, you know, pop your shirt off, grow a big beard, switch this off, and go and follow his stuff. But that's not what we're talking about here. That's becoming a that's becoming a creator. That's a different thing. We're talking about becoming a successful copywriter. So I think there are four aspects that you need to think about, 4 elements that make up your personal brand. I'll just tell you all 4 of them and then we'll unpack them. So the first is where on the hierarchy of value you sit, your services. We'll come back to that. What problem do you solve? And who do you solve it for? What's your promise? And then what's your offer? I think you need all 4 of those things to have a compelling personal brand. That is to say, something you are well known for, a reputation within your chosen segment of the market that leads to recurring work of some sort, recurring revenue of some sort, getting paid lots is the goal ultimately, or getting paid lots to do work that you love would be the ultimate expression, wouldn't it? I think for most of us, there are some ways of getting paid lots of money for work that you'll hate. We don't really want that. So those are the 4 elements. So the first one, the hierarchy of value, I talk about this a lot on our live calls. I think it's a massive area of this whole sort of aspect of copywriting that people don't think about. So there is a hierarchy of value within what we do. Okay, some things are inherently less valuable than others. So, for instance, being a word nerd, or I do the words, or saying I take tasks off busy entrepreneurs so that they don't have to. Okay, these are low value propositions. They are not highly valued by anybody. They are valued to a certain extent. You know, none of the value here is 0, fortunately. But being task orientated, a time saver, just doing the words, looking after the website or whatever, that's at the lower end of the hierarchy. Think of it like a sort of yield curve. It's like down here. You know, it's the, I don't know if my on my video I'm reversed, so I don't know if my hand gestures make any sense. It's the lower end, and then as things go, as you get up the scale, the value of what you're offering gets higher. So strategic thinking, consulting, that's a little bit higher up. Results, even higher up than that. Strategic results, so being able to plan a campaign, think about the strategy, and then deliver and execute on that. So you're able to deliver a result. Ownership of the project, that's really high. Somebody who will come in, set a goal alongside a client and then work towards that goal and won't stop until that goal is achieved. That's ownership, isn't it? You own the project, you own you're working towards a goal rather than delivering on a project that's just laid out in a sort of flat way. So you want to figure out where on that hierarchy of value you are. Now, I don't want you to think that any part of that is wrong. It's not wrong to say I take to be task orientated. I save you time in the day so that you don't have to write emails. I do the words on your website. That's fine. Those are absolutely, but they're absolutely viable ways of going about things. But know where they are on that hierarchy of value. Know how valuable they are, and know that there's a limit. to how much you're going to be able to charge for those services. So if you want to be down there because that's what you love, or that's where you are in your career, or that's where your connections lie, then fine. But know that, and know that your pitch there is going to be more about volume, isn't it? It's a lower value proposition. There's a cap to how much I can charge. You know, can you charge somebody £2,000 a day to take a few emails off their plate? Probably not. Probably not.
And it's the idea as well. The idea as well, Nick, that by identifying these different ranges, even if you are, for the time being, like at the lower end of that, which, as you say, is fine, but you have to be aware that you are going to be limited in your ability to get paid. So if you're fine with that, if you're like, yeah, that's all I need, great. But you can get very quickly into a trap where you kind of feel like you're churning and you're not getting the big bucks or whatever. And you think, well, why not? What am I doing wrong? And it's nothing that you're doing wrong. It's just that you're positioned in the wrong way. So it's good to know that, all right, I'm going to have to, at some point, if I want to take it to the next level, I'm going to have to move on that scale. And that's not just doing more of what you do or charging more for it. It means you'll have to change what you're offering ultimately.
Yeah, and I think where I think this is a problem is where people accidentally pitch themselves as the wrong part of on the wrong level of the hierarchy value. So they say, I love the words, I do the word. I'm sure somebody out there has "I'm a word nerd" as their LinkedIn profile. I'm sure 50 people have it because it sounds like a copy, doesn't it? Word nerd. I love words. Fine. So long as you don't, want to get paid lots and lots and lots of money as a highly paid copywriter, then it's fine. But if you just wrote that and pitched yourself as that because it sounded good and didn't think about this element, then you're going to come into some problems down the line. So none of this is criticism. It's about being aware. So for instance, if you're the person that writes the brief, you are inherently higher up the value chain. It's been a curve, a hierarchy. Now it's a chain.
The value road.
So, for instance, sometimes people ask me to write copy, and I say, "Well, there's no way on this earth I have time to do what you're asking for, or it's probably going to cost you way too much. I'm just going to end up. It's not going to work." But what if I wrote you a brief, and then you can give that to another copywriter, and then they can go and deliver on that? So that's a bit of strategy, it's quite a lot of strategy, but it's also execution of one part of that strategy. I'll write the brief for you. Okay, that inherently is higher up than the person that then takes that brief and writes that copy. So sometimes I'll say that to people, like, look, you can probably go and find a much cheaper copywriter to actually write this for you. Why don't we just work together on what it's going to be, what the goal is, what the parameters are, and you go away and do it, or go and find somebody else. That's an understanding of where you sit and where you want to be on that chain of value, or that. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to get through this now without trying to come up with loads of different metaphors. The value box has lots of handles, okay?
The value stairs. Stepping your way up the value stairs. The stairway to value.
I think before the stairway, the value stairway leads to the value aperture that goes to the roof of value. Okay, never mind. We're getting lost. Okay, so think about that.
The rooftop value, penthouse value.
We want to be value roofs.
Yeah.
Penthouse. The value of Okay, so just think about that and make sure that you are pitching yourself at the right level. Okay, next part, which will actually help you answer that question. What problem do you solve and who for? So who's your target customer as a copywriter? We talk about this loads when you're writing a piece of copy, you need to think about the customer that's going to buy that product. Well, who's going to buy your services as a copywriter? Who are you selling to? So this is the problem with I've got 1,000 copywriter connections on LinkedIn. Fine. Those people don't buy what you have to sell. They're not your customer. They're pointless in that regard. They may have a point and a value separate to that, But in terms of pitching your services, they're not your customer. Work out who that customer is. Is it a marketing director? Is it a business owner? Is it So for instance, I like to work with a really good head of copy. I don't really want to work, say, for a business owner that doesn't really know they need copy. Yeah, or they don't quite know what they want. Because I just think I don't want to have to tell you what you need. That's a different job. Maybe it's a higher paid job. I've got to persuade you that it's higher paid. Because then I'm sort of doing
a huge amount of education to be done in that. And that's when you have to also educate as well as sell your services. That means you need a longer sales letter. That means you need a longer pitch. That needs all of that stuff. So that's going to cost you more time and effort and energy. And possibly, can you invest all of that time in that client, and will they ever understand it? You don't know. It's much higher risk in that situation.
That is 100% a valid strategy to say my goal is to take direct response and email marketing techniques to businesses that don't know they need them yet, persuade them. That is a valid strategy. That's your target. Okay, now my sales process is going to look like this. If you can make it work, you'll make a lot of money, I would say, especially if you're good, because you're the prophet there, aren't you? Prophet in the biblical sense. You're arriving and saying, I will show you the way. Okay, so
and you're climbing the Valley Mountain. You're taking Moses up the mountain, or Muhammad up the mountain.
Dressed as Moses. Yes. Yeah. But like, that's a valid strategy. It's not one I want to pursue, but because I've thought about this and thought, I don't want to have to do that. I want to work with a head of copy that knows exactly what sort of copy they want. Their problem is they can't find the right people to do it, or the people that do it come with, they need too much help. There's too much drama. They can't do it independently or whatever, so that my offer can be connected to that problem. So I know that. So in my industry, I'm going to cultivate relationships with heads of copy and to a certain extent publishers if that head of copy role doesn't exist. So in that space, I might know marketers and I might know editors and I might know, but generally my client, the people I really want to build a strong working relationship with, are going to be head of copy. And I know that. I've done that job. I know what problems they have. I've done the publisher role too. I know what problems they have. So I can tailor my offer and my offering to those problems. You need to think about what your target customer looks like and what their problems are. Because once you have worked that out, it's going to be a lot easier. So make sure. So, and again, we can map this onto the hierarchy of value. If you're helping out somebody in a relatively junior role, it's not going to be as valuable as if you're helping somebody out in a senior role. So your customer might sit on that hierarchy in some way. It's going to be very hard for a junior member of staff to say, I've just hired this incredibly expensive copywriter to do this job for us, because it's going to be like, whoa, that's a big business decision. You shouldn't really be. Okay, but maybe the CEO might, or the marketing director might, or the head of copy might. So think about those things. Who are you going to pitch your services to? Because these are the people that need to understand what your personal brand is. I know we haven't really talked about how you would create that yet, but you need to work all this out first, so that when you present yourself to the world, you're presenting yourself to the right people in the right way with the right offer. Ultimately, that's all it comes down to.
It will also, by understanding all of this, it stops you, I don't know why I'm thinking of the ridiculous Boris Johnson phrase, but doing a whack-a-mole thing where you're just going out there, you're trying there, you're going that you don't know which channels are working. You might be getting all your clients from a very dry thing you do over here in this passageway, but you're actually doing all of this stuff and going, oh, I'm doing this, then it's just a mess. So and that's wasting energy, it's wasting effort, it's wasting time that you could be focused on earning money, kind of thing.
So just a little red flag thing to situation. I think a lot of people will have been in this situation before. This is where your customer isn't quite who you thought they were. We've probably all been in situations where you start talking to somebody at a business about your services. They seem very keen. They want you to work on a project. It seems like the right kind of work. And then they say, I need to go and talk to X, Y, or Z about this. The CEO, the marketing director, whatever. Then they go cold because that person doesn't like it. Okay, that's fine. But what that situation tells you is you were talking to the wrong person. or that person isn't your client because they're not in a position to actually say, yes, you've got your services solve a problem I've got, and I've got the firepower to solve that problem by paying you. So that happens all the time. It's happened to me tons of times. It's happened to us both in side projects. It's not a problem, but it just shows you that you were talking to the wrong person all along. Your pitch was at the wrong customer. And it's not always possible to work that out until you're down the line. You know, you're going to have leads that go cold or trails that go dead. But just that's always a sign that, like, right, it was the wrong offer to the wrong person, because they can't, if they take it to their senior person and that person goes, oh, wow, that solves a huge problem. That's a brilliant situation, because they're literally taking you up the chain of value, Glenn. They're taking you onto the rooftop of value and beyond, into the
now it's not even the stairs, it's an escalator now. It's doing the work itself. It's the escalator of value. It's
a roll bar lift value.
Just to say on that, and it's worth pointing out because everybody suffers from this in some way, apart from you, Nick. But the idea that when you're going out and that person goes to their boss and goes, hey, we've got this copywriter who's great, and they go, well, hang on a minute, they're going to solve the problem that I'm paying you to solve. So what's going on? So of course they're going to turn around and not employ you and what have you. But that's just an actual reason why so many of your pitches will go cold. Like, it's not you. It's like the Robin Williams, it's not you. It wasn't your fault, to Matt Damon kind of thing. But it's not you. It's that in that situation, you could be the best, the worst, or whatever. It's irrelevant. It's the fact that because you've gone to a person who can't solve the problem and are being paid to solve the problem, and they've gone, we need more money or whatever, that's nothing to do with you. So it's just it's worth remembering, these are all the reasons why things go cold. And you think, oh God, is it me? Did I overprice? Did I do this thing? No, it's nothing to do with you. It's internal politics within the business that you are approaching. And it's worth thinking about that, because we skip past all those things and it's like, oh no, it's not me. And then you probably think, oh, maybe I should have charged less than that. It's like, no, it was nothing to do with what you were charging. There are myriad other reasons, and that's a big one, I think. But yeah, continue.
You should never think I should have charged less, ever. That's what your services cost. If somebody else won't pay it, fine. It just means they're not your customer. Don't ever think, oh, I should have changed. You know, the only time you should ever have regret around this, I should have done that. I should have written it that way. I should have written it differently. You can control that. So that's different. Okay, so the next thing is, so where on a hierarchy of value do you sit? Think about that. What problem do you solve and for who? Okay, the next one is, what's your promise? You should be able to articulate what you offer and what you don't offer in a couple of sentences. And that what you don't offer is as important as what you do offer, because it's really easy to get into a situation where you're talking to somebody, you're pitching your services, they're asking what you do, they're obviously interested. And the temptation then is to say yes to everything that they might want you to do. That tends to be an absolute nightmare down the line. You need to be really clear on what your promise is. What do I offer? What can I do for you? And what can't I do for you? And if what they want is not what you do, push them away politely, but firmly. You have to protect your brand, your offering, your reputation by not just saying I do everything, because it's a recipe for disaster, frankly. And the temptation is always to say yes, because it's very hard to say no. But you need to know what you're about and what you do, and you need to defend the boundaries of that. So what's your promise? What do you actually do? Can you write that out in a sentence? Try it. I bet lots of people watching this video can't actually articulate what it is they do. Now, if that's a piece of copy that you're working on, you're going to go away and rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it until you work it out. But with our own services, it's really easy to just think, oh, well, I'm a copywriter. Right. Same as the other 10,000 people out there then. What is it that you do? What is your promise? What are you offering me?
And you're talking...
You need to work that out.
You're talking in terms of well, there's two elements to it, isn't there? I guess you do need to say, I write websites or whatever, or I write blogs, or I think, but also what is the outcome of that? So think of it in terms of like, what is the effect, the impact of what you do, and be thinking in a broader destination rather than the actual journey of it. Actually, what's the outcome? What actually happens? What in that sense? What you are promising? I promise. It's not that I will give you thousands of words of content. It's that I will help you build a relationship with your customers by this means. It's finding the balance between the actual what and the kind of the why, I guess.
Yeah, and like for instance, just to use the example that you just said, you know, if you define yourself as I write websites, as lots of people, so that's fine. It's quite low on the value thing. Okay, so your client is somebody who knows they need a new website, right? You know, you're not going to try and persuade. You might try to persuade them, but then you're trying to persuade somebody that doesn't want that. So they already need a website. You can provide the website for them. That's that. But if you pitch your services differently, you might start the whole conversation differently and say, well, who says you need a new website? What's the goal here? You know, I wouldn't, you know, that would be because don't know how to write a website. I don't have that skill set, so I wouldn't want to take the conversation in that direction. But you might think, well, who's your customer? Maybe why don't we work out who we're trying to talk to and what the messaging is? I'll get the messaging right. Maybe then we can talk about the website. So that's pitching your services differently, isn't it? It's think where does your service sit in that whole value matrix? I've come up with another one.
Don't, because I'll sit here and I'm thinking of other ones. But yeah, cool. So
that's the next one. What's your promise? What do you promise? And then the final thing is, what's your offer? So really, that's what do you charge? You know, what's the billing rate? How do you go about things? You know, how do you structure what you do? Because you need to work that out at the outset. You may not stick to it perfectly, but you do need to have a good sense of what you think your time is worth, because that's dialed into everything else that we just talked about. Because what we want people to encounter, like sort of in aggregate, when we add all these things together, is somebody who knows what they do, knows why it's valuable, knows who it's for, and knows what it costs, knows how valuable it is to their customer, knows how to accurately and honestly value what that package of things presents. That to me is a strong personal brand.
With confidence. One thing I advise this on the Secretly Successful Copywriter course, but I'll tell you now, practice saying how much you charge. Like actually practice saying, all right, it's this a day, it's this an hour, it's this for a package of this. Like actually practice and embody it physically of saying this stuff and get it out of that kind of like 200 quid, like, is that enough, Johnny? Kind of thing. You've got to be just going, all right, yeah, well, that costs this, that's that, and that's that. Most of the time, you probably do it all on email or what have you, but in person, there will be occasions where you got to say, just actually practice, vocalize this stuff. You were saying about writing down what you offer. I would write this all down and actually put together a personal branding. Well, I'm going to argue this is part of personal branding. There's a lot of other personal branding issues to go into this, but for this positioning statement kind of thing, you should write that down and get it clearly on the page, and then practice it. Like actually say it. Pitch yourself. You can come in and pitch on the Friday call to the copywriters on the accelerator or in the Discord. Like share your thing. You can leave some details out. People generally talk about how much they're charging anyway, because that's part of the transparency of what we do in the accelerator. But like test it out. Don't just sit there going, is that enough? Because a clever business person will see it and they'll go, all right, what if I just dropped it by 100 quid or what have you and push you back? Oh, we can't afford that. But if you come and go, this is how this is like, that's the way we play. They'll sense that and go, all right, okay, fine. Like there's no room for maneuver on that. Is there? And you go, no, like that's it. So just
I mean, this is confidence is an important aspect of this, but, and I'm going to make a broader point in a second, but if you tell somebody what your services cost, and you've honestly and fairly thought about it from all parties, what the result might be if the copy works, and you've got a track record and all those different things, you know how many other people there are out there that could maybe offer that service. So you've got to think about all these things. Okay, so if somebody says to me, well, how does it cost? And I say it costs this, and they go, oh, well, that's too much, more than I can afford. I say, well, that's a shame. Would you like me to recommend you a cheaper copywriter? Because I don't, maybe that's slightly, but like there are plenty of people out there that charge less. I can introduce you to one of them.
Copywriter out there.
You have to defend the boundaries of who you are. And I'm not saying you should just, enter the industry, no experience, try and go really high, really super premium. That's not what I'm saying. You need to think about all these things, and you may choose to go in at a certain point in that, chain of value. So that's where I want to be. That's what's right for me, and that's fine. There is no sort of wrong answer, but just know why you're there and really think about it. Now, I would draw all this together in a document. You're probably never going to share it with somebody else. It's for you. It tells you who you are and what you do. Okay, now, if you want to start creating content on LinkedIn or a blog or on YouTube or an e-letter or whatever, go for it. Use this document and try to figure out ways of making sure your content connects with elements of what you're offering here. So it might be showing that you understand your customer. So for instance, it might be really talking about problems only heads of copy have, and really hammering that. That was just using one for my own. If that's who my client is, I want to show that, okay, so I need to write things that's going to really connect with those people and show that I understand that. Okay, how can I do that in an interesting way? That's fine if you want to then use those things, but you're doing it now with a strategy that connects back to actually what you do and who you do it for, rather than, I see tons of copy that's like content online from copywriters that's effectively a rehash of somebody else's thing. I mean, I've seen people publish blogs that was really rehashing an episode of The Fix. Such and such, Glenn said this, and such said this, and it's like, okay, fine, it's very flattering, but what is this achieving for you? How does this connect to what you do in any way, shape, or form, apart from nominally being about copywriting? And what we do is only nominally. I mean, some of the shit we come out with on the live course, like, how is this about copywriting? But so that's not cogent enough to really build anything of value for you. If you work it out first, work out what your personal brand is, who it's supposed to appeal to. Okay, now you can start to create content. So let's say part of what you offer is, I'll bring real, home truths to your marketing. I'll tell you things that you don't want to hear about. I'll find holes in what you're doing, and you won't like what I have to say, but you need to hear it, because if there's problems with your marketing, if it's spiky and acerbic like that, for instance, right, you can create a whole suite of content about that embodies and sort of takes that voice on a little bit further. That's good, that connects, but don't just do it from nowhere because, I need to write something about copywriting today. It's like, well, so do a million other people. No one's reading any of it. You need to work this stuff out first. The way you're just nodding at me. Sometimes once per episode, then just let it go.
You're slightly delayed. So I'm nodding so that in case it's my end, you can see that I'm like still there. But also because it's slightly delayed, I don't know if I can't see your face to see if you actually finished your point, and you've got that warm sparkle of hitting home the powerful point that you've made and going, eat this, copywriting world. It's kind of in a weird, for anybody on the video watching, I'm in a weird meeting room in King's Cross that I've hired like some small gangster who's doing a script session with the writers from The Wire. It's very strange. But anyway, yeah, it's I corroborate everything you've said. I think a lot of people will bristle. I think a lot of people go, well, there's two things that I think people will kind of go, oh, right. Because I don't think, well, I'd almost guarantee that almost no one has ever done that, any of this in their life. Maybe not, certainly not in a conscious way. You might have, by chance, put together some of these elements, which is great. As I was saying, I was talking to my friend last night, and he's thinking in those terms across those things. But the idea of bringing it all together and going, right, that's where I am. That's valuable and worth doing, and you should do that. But I think what other people will bristle against is go, oh, personal brand. No, it's how do you be fun like crazy? Like, how do I come across as like the wordsmith person or all that kind of stuff? And they go, but you're talking about positioning. We're talking about positioning. Hopefully people can see how it's all got to feed into together, because if you're promising this presenting this in public, and that's your personal brand as you're presenting it, but then when they come along and go, oh, can you do that for us? And you go, yeah, it costs a tenner, and it's actually, I do this, and it's completely different to what you actually offer and what you promise as a copywriter. It's going to be incongruous. It's not going to work, and that's where you're going to have these problems, and you're not going to be able to get clients for that, because you're just a floating mess of different bits of branding and offers and promises. It's just not coherent. So that's why it all ties together. This is obviously a bigger issue to discuss generally.
Well, we can come back to it. But I mean, the wordsmith thing's a classic example. Who wakes up in the morning and says, I need a wordsmith? Nobody thinks that. That's how you want to see yourself.
I actually get angry when I'm described as a wordsmith, or I see the people doing wordsmithery and all this kind of, I love words. It's like, who doesn't love words? Like what are you on about? Like it's just nonsense. I don't think it's a very good thing. And also, the irony with it being is technically what the peak of that wordsmith would be that you are like Will Self, and that you use all of these incredible words that you're plucking out of the ether, and it's like, oh, this massive polysyllable word, but they're useless in copy. We want to speak directly. I think we actually probably want to use fewer words. So it's just, anyway.
It's intimidating. Anyway, here's what I think how we should end this episode. One, for the vast majority of people, like you said, probably never maybe done this in a structured way. Try that process. Send the copy in, join the accelerator. We can look at it in private with you on one of our live calls or whatever it might be. And if you're one of those people that's bristled and you've made it this far and you think we're completely wrong, then get in touch and explain why. Let's have the right of reply, and then we'll explain why you're wrong. We'll get our value matrix out. No, if you have a different opinion, then I'd love to hear it.
We'll grease the value pole and push you back down it, so you go spinning down the value pole. I was disappointed.
Exactly.
I was disappointed. I could see Gemma in the back of your video there doing some weeding and moving. At one point, she was carrying bushels closer to your window, and I was hoping that she was potentially making a kind of wicker man around your office, and that at some point you'd just see flames, and you'd just burn away in a blaze of glory. That never happened, and I'm sad.
It's she actually made the wicker man of me last night, so we missed that. No, well, actually, we're going on holiday tomorrow, so she's just doing the last bit of gardening before we leave the garden to its own devices. Which reminds me, we should wrap this up, because I'm supposed to go and pack the rest of my stuff into the camper van before we head off to France later this week. So, Glenn, it's been a pleasure. I'll be back in a couple of weeks. You're going to put this out, I don't know when, but we'll be back with another episode of The Fix at some point this summer, whenever Glenn gets me.
It'll be next week, as it always is, due to the magic of my content management system that is my mind. But yeah, it will be. It might be in the next hour. You might see that. Nick just appears back off holiday, but like with a mustache and a baguette.
with garlic and onions around my neck. Right, it's been a pleasure, Glenn. I'm going to wrap this one up and say thank you very much. I hope that was useful, everybody. It was designed to be mildly amusing and hopefully semi-useful. Hopefully we achieved that. Cheers, everybody. We'll see you again some point down the line. Thank you very much and goodbye.